The situation in Donetsk and Luhansk regions is characterized with a continuation of active combat opposition between Russian terrorist groupings and the units of the forces of the anti-terrorist operation. The most complicated is the situation around the city of Debaltsevo. The illegal armed formations continue to assault the positions of the Ukrainian military next to the city of Uhlehorsk and settlements Sanzharivky and Nizhny Lozovoy, Artemovskogo district Donetsk region, with an aim to gradually push out the Ukrainian forces from their positions. Also, over the last 24 hours, the terrorists launched assaults of strongholds and road checkpoints of Ukrainian military next to the settlements Luhansk and Leninsk in Donetsk region. However, all the attacks of the militants were repelled, and our military are in their positions. Besides, in the city of Debaltseve, the terrorists have shelled the building of the city council, which houses the joint center of coordination and control according to Minsk agreements. In this way, the militants are again demonstrating that they do not want the restoration of peace in Donbass. From the city of Yasenovata, the terrorists have shelled the Avdiivka chemical plant, as a result of which a worker of the enterprise was wounded. At the moment, the plant does not work, which may lead to the halt of heating in the city. Over the last 24 hours, we have lost 5 Ukrainian military and 28 got wounds of different level, as in connection with frequent artillery and mortar shells from the side of the terrorists, the transfer of the passage of vehicles through road checkpoints Kurakhov and Georgievka have been suspended yesterday next to Pavlopol in the vicinity of Mariupol. The Ukrainian border guards have detected the flight of the enemy drone. According to our information from the ground, the Russian point of crossing point Donetsk was passed by 15 buses and 5 tented lorries from Russian territory to Ukraine. Also, they allowed 2 micro minivans to Ukraine, some with people in military uniform in them. The bandit formations of DNR and LNR, together with the units of special designation of armed forces of Russia, are activizing their subversive and intelligence activity on the territory controlled by the Ukrainian authorities. They plan to conduct events in order to instigate people to actions of disobedience, to disrupt the work of the authorities, and to disseminate provocative information in public transport, on stations, markets, and so on. We call upon the citizens to display vigilance and not to yield to enemy's provocations. Yesterday, the government of Ukraine has resolved to create a joint register of the families of military who were killed as a result in the course of the anti-terrorist operation and who are not provided with their dwellings. The information will be provided by the Ministry of Defense, National Guards, Border Guards, the Security Service of Ukraine, the Service for Extraordinary Situations, and the State Service of Special Transportation. Ukraine does provide rewards for their military who protect their motherland. At the initiative of the President of the Ukraine, the government decided to additionally award the military who take part in the anti-terrorist operation, who are successful in their combat acts. For instance, if the brigade has successfully perform the combat tasks, they get additionally 365,000 hryvnia, a regiment 243,000, battalion 121,000, and a company 60,000. The evacuation of peaceful residents from frontline cities continues. Yesterday, the volunteers have transported to Slovyansk people from settlements that suffer as a result of shellings from the terrorists. In particular, from Debaltseve, 243 people, including 27 children, were evacuated, 107 people from Mironivka and 250 from Avdiivka, including 11 children. All in all, over the 3 last days of January, the zone of the conflict was left by 1,872 people. The Ukrainian Power Authority provides humanitarian relief to the cities in spite of the continuous shelling from the part of terrorists. In particular, yesterday, the State Emergency Service delivered to Avdiivka polyethylene film, medicines, and fire extinguishing equipment. On behalf of the International Committee of Red Cross to Debaltseve, 162 boxes of food sets was delivered to Debaltseve, the total weight amounting to almost 300.5 tons. Kramatorsk got 3 tons of cargo with building material and medicines. As a result of the sharpening of the situation on the front line, the medical personnel of Artemovsk Central District Hospital works in a reinforced regime. They were joined by specialists from neighboring settlements, also by people from Kiev and Kharkiv. And the personnel from the medical company of the National Guards of Ukraine and volunteers also take part in the treatment of wounded. Recently, they have evacuated a hospital from Svetlodarsk that also suffered as a result of shelling by the militants. The first priority medical help is given to almost 100 wounded. The Ukrainian patriots do support their defenders. They help to military and National Guards in from the residents of Mariupol has become a citywide public movement. Yesterday in Odessa, the volunteers have painted a car that they bought for their own and public money in order to provide medical help in the zone of anti-terrorist operation. Next week, together with the car, they will transfer radio stations, a laptop, and sights, gun sights for the military. The members of public organizations in the city of Pervomaisk, Mykolaiv region, have re-equipped for Ukrainian soldiers another car, UAZ-452 tablet, and they also handed over some humanitarian help with it. 100 of policemen from Zhytomyr region have moved to the east of Ukraine on the 31st of January, and they will replace their brothers in arms who for a month fought in Donbass.
The question will be in
could you just say a few words about the situation in Debaltsevo? Are the Ukrainian soldiers in Debaltsevo surrounded by militants, by rebels? And approximately how many soldiers are in Debaltsevo at the moment? Thank you.
Дякую за the city of Debaltsevo. It is not surrounded now. Ukrainian military continue to hold the positions that they have The units which are sent there to help our servicemen in Debaltsevo are counter-attacking the enemy, and they are not allowing them to close the so-called Debaltsevo kettle. If you can see it, from these directions, they're holding the positions and they are not allowing the enemy to surround the city. And the enemy during the last 24 hours made several attempts from different sides to attack our positions in Debaltsevo. These attacks were from this direction, also from Uhlehorsk, Alchevsk, and Pervomaisk, from these directions. Now the situation is monitored and all the necessary forces to support our military are provided to make impossible the offense of the enemy, and that is, and also we are shelling, that is preventive shelling. There are cases when the militants do not manage to deploy their warfare convoy. There is information that Zakharchenko announced the general mobilization, which they are planning to conduct during 10 days. We will verify this information, but that means that the militants do not have enough live force, and they failed to occupy Debaltsevo, which is a strategic railway point, and our military are successfully holding it. The number of personnel which is in Debaltsevo is sufficient to maintain the positions and not to surrender the city. Another question from Terka, Ukraine. My question is about the information about the downed aircraft in Gorlivka. The armed forces of Ukraine, according to Minsk agreements, cannot use military aviation, and it's not used. Ukraine is observing all the requirements, and the information on the use of Ukrainian aviation against land forces of the militants is not true, and it looks like justification for Moscow why militants failed to occupy Debaltsevo. So nothing was flying there, and they could not down anything. We can use the aviation, only medical aviation, and we do that to transport our wounded people to medical institutions. The military aviation is not used. Could they down any aircraft? Not a single aircraft was downed there. Yesterday there was information about shelling of a bus with people who were evacuated from Debaltsevo. I have no details on that. Does the evacuation continue? If there are people willing to leave the city, they are provided the opportunity to leave the city, and the local authorities provide transportation for evacuation. Channel 5. One more clarification. You were talking about number of people who were taken out, 800. You said from the 28th till the 31st of January. Any other questions or clarifications? No more, thank you.